So,
You know, as well, like.
but you
Maybe it's your way of storing the ice so that you can use ice in the winter. Ice pack, you know, they do just stick out the ice bag and walk right up the hill and it was a little ice cream by the time it gets to the
My house still. It just.
So,
It's 3:30, so, let's, like if everyone's ready, we can, get going. We can,
do you think we're gonna
turn the volume up for them, probably.
I hear you fine.
Okay, great. We're turning your volume up so we hear you.
Is,
Mike,
Is it-
you good?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah,
Same
Bob,
here.
we hear you. Mike, we hear you yet?
I can hear you. Hopefully you can hear me.
Okay, yep. Good. All right, we'll get going. Great, to the right sheet. Welcome, everyone, to the February 26th, 2026 Monarch County Planning Board meeting. We are recording it and it is being live streamed. We do have a number of votes today, so we'll get going. The call roll. Bill Santos, hi. Mike Wiedemer,
Here?
Dave Watson,
Here?
Millie Safran, actually, no Millie Safranek, right? So Therese Bryant.
Read them in email, he's running late.
Like, okay. Elizabeth McDade. Good. Welcome. Milton Chardo, sorry, Chardo.
Here.
All right. Victor Sanchez. Not yet. Robert Coley,
Here.
Rachel Bernhardt. Amy Grower. Connor McMahon.
Here.
Adrian Green. Jennifer Cesario. Joe Taddeo.
Here.
Richard Tantalo. Christina Doherty. Sean Murphy.
Here.
And Andy Frazier. Andy today. Okay, great. And Yishen, would you like to introduce?
So the
Thank you.
staff and the department, here, we have a lot of representatives, Josh Peterson here. And for the CIP amendment, we have our Parks Department, Director, Meredith, and Robert Kylie and Ashley Long join us via Zoom, and Tom Murphy too. Welcome. And then we have our from the airport, Director Andy Moore here, and from Monroe Community Hospital, we have Darren Vogt in the end, and Rob Camilleri here join us. Bye.
Great.
And
And
then for
you?
the planning staff,
Right.
we have Bray Sherburne, tech support, and Lisa Huntington, and myself, Ishan Lee.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out. First item on the agenda is approval of the January 29th, 2026 meeting minutes. They were emailed to you in your packet, and I need a motion for those, please. Thank you, Rachel.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? Comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that is carried. Announcements and communications. You want me to take that one or?
Can do the.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll do a board member update. So our board member, Minnie Safanet, was elected to Henrietta Town Board and began her new role at the Town of Henrietta in January 2026. So she no longer serving on the town planning board, and unfortunately she submitted her a resignation this month due to some of the road conflicts. And so the board has to request a new appointment to fill the vacancy. And I thank Lily for her service for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
on the board.
Great job. Thank her for that, for her time and volunteering. Any other board member comments? Staff comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to action items. Item 3A in your agenda, and is to amend the 2026 capital budget to increase funding for the project entitled Parks Replacement Vehicles by $120,000 from $380,000 to a total authorization of $500,000, and decrease the funding for the project entitled Parks Heavy Duty Equipment by the same $120,000 for a total authorization of $1,667,000. I need a motion for that, please. Thank you, Sean. Is there a second? Thank you, Christina. And Parks is here. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good, very good. Well, I'll provide a brief overview. The action before the planning board moves $120,000 from heavy duty equipment to the passenger vehicle line. This is being done after a consultation with MC Fleet out of DES for the acquisition of 2 new Ford F-250s or equivalents, could be Chevy Silverados, and 1 new Ford Escape. The vehicles to be replaced range in age from 2007 Chevy Express van with 180,000 miles to a 2011 Express van with 165,000 miles to a Blazer from 2010 with 98,000 miles. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Parks?
Could you turn the volume up a little bit? Please. Thank you.
I didn't see. What time? What vote did you hear? Okay, minutes too? You heard from it. Sorry. No comments for Parks. Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Bye now. Have a good day.
Yep, have a good rest of the week. Okay, great. Next item is item 3B, and that is to amend the 2026 through 2031 capital improvement program and the 2026 capital budget to add a project entitled Airport Property Acquisition at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport in the amount of $500,000. Any motion for that, please? Thank you, David. Is there a second? Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, and we have Mr. Moore here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate being here this afternoon. Real quick, I'm looking for approval so that we can reactivate our account, our capital account with the county. As the letter resolution, I'm sorry, the referral states, it was active before, but since there was really no activity in the account over a period of time, I think it was about 3 years, became deactive, and we want to bring it back to being active again with some level of funding in there should some opportunities arise around the airport where we would be interested in purchasing some properties, particularly properties at the end of our 2 runways, the north-south runway and the east-west runway, which sometimes do become available as owners or realtors will reach out to the airport and ask if we have an interest in those properties. So this is just to reactivate that account, that capital account, and amend the capital budget, the 2026 through 2031 budget. Thank you.
I recall, if you didn't use the money or you're approaching the end of the fiscal year, you would just roll it, right? That was
That is correct.
on the
yes.
plan and on the master plan and so on. So
That is correct. And we don't have any particular properties in mind right now. It's just to keep the account alive in case something does arise. We've got it ready to go. We've got the mechanism ready to go.
this regular, what kind of vehicles are you allowed to use for this type of account? Are you generating interest? Is it like treasuries, or are you allowed to invest it in safer,
It's
strictly cash?
it's an authorization to finance,
Oh,
so
okay.
there's no monies.
Got it. Okay. Any other?
When was your last appropriation for property?
It probably was 5 years ago. It was before COVID, so it would actually be about 6 years ago. There was a parcel at the corner of Buell Road in Brooks Avenue. It was a former gas station. I think it was Sugar Creek. It was a perfect headquarters for a parking operation. They approached us and whether we were interested in purchasing it or not, we jumped on it. So that was the last purchase that we had for the airport. And that, again, that probably was 2018 or 19.
Do you have any sense as to what could possibly go into some of these properties? Like, is it going to help expand the runways? Is it going to help expand like buildings for your operations, like you just mentioned?
There's no real intention to expand the runways with this purchase property or this mechanism right now. A good example of where this would come into play is if you look at the crosswind runway, it's runway 1028. It goes east and west, typically used in the winter time. So it gets used a lot right now based on wind. On Bean Road, which is to the west of the airport, there are some small houses along there, and they have voluntarily sold those properties as owners have put the property up for sale to the airport. And that is in the approach corridor and the departure corridor of that runway. So that becomes very attractive for us to have control over that property. And the FAA, per their grant assurances that are allotted to all public use airports, does strongly encourage airports to have control over those types of properties, particularly at the end of runways where planes are, approach. What I use is approach corridors and departure corridors. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Andy, if I follow that, so that's kind of a safety precaution, right? Because it wouldn't allow you to lengthen that runway, given that I think there's railroad tracks in between those properties you were referring to in the west end of 1028.
That is correct. It would strictly be just control of the property in that particular safety area. So absolutely, it would fall under the category of a procurement for the safety of the runway and the approach corridor, departure corridor, depending how you want to look at it.
When you purchase those properties that have houses, do you typically erase the house or do you try to rent them out?
No, we would typically look to demolish the property and just kind of turn it into raw land. That's the safest thing to do versus being a landlord. And that's really not the purpose of what we want to do with these types of properties. It doesn't really it doesn't help us, in other words, if we still have tenants in there and dealing with those issues.
And also the property becomes noise nuisance becomes less of an issue if you have those houses not there.
Correct. Yep. And in the past, historically, those have been voluntarily presented to the airport by the owner or a member of the family if the owners have deceased or a realtor. We have not used eminent domain or condemnation for those types of purchases in the past. It's been a volunteer sale.
You reach out to them with periodic mailings in those areas and say, just give you a heads up, we're always interested, you know?
So in that particular area, the neighbors have done it for us.
Okay.
To be honest with you. You know, so we haven't had to be that proactive to it.
Yeah.
But I think typically in the world of real estate, if you put something up for sale, your natural potential buyer is surrounding entities. And we get approached from time to time from other property owners if we're interested in buying their property. And if it really doesn't serve a real purpose for the airport or a benefit to the airport, then we're just honestly not interested in purchasing it. We're not interested in just purchasing properties to have properties. So we've turned down some in the past that just didn't have a real purpose for the airport.
Any other questions for Mr. Moore? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Next item is item 3C. And that is to amend the 2026 through 2031 capital improvement program and the 2026 capital budget to expand the scope and increase the funding for our roof improvement project in the amount of $3 million for a total authorization of $5.5 million. I need a motion for that, please. Thank you, Elizabeth. Is there a second? Thank you, Victor. And I'm assuming Sean?
Yeah, there you
go. Welcome.
Thank you. So this is just from our viewpoint, a pretty standard public works contract replacement of roofing on facilities and all that, but you can just, actually, that's typical there, just as a reminder. Next slide, just gives everybody the overview of MCH on aerial view. And as we all know, that's a very critical community asset. Any questions? Pay attention, don't worry. It's a great community asset, you know, skilled nursing facility. The residents that are there, I've had several family members that have been there, and the services are great. It's really something that's necessary to have. So clearly, we want to make sure the infrastructure and the envelope are secure so that the residents inside are secure and safe. So with that, there had been a capital project set up that had a few $1 million added to it, but in order to accelerate the project and try to get more projects done, we're asking for some additional funds. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see there's about 107,000 square feet of roof at the facility. And this just shows you a breakup. But on the next slide, you can see the projects that have been done in the past. The Spanish tile is it's not decorative, but it's a tile that's pretty good, pretty resilient and all that. But that was repaired in 86. Back in 87, the service building in the back was done. The crossover building, which is around the Hope facility, was done in 90. 2002, auditorium roof was done. Faith roof was done in about 2013. So you can see these are all, if not at beyond their life, which is generally a 30-year life for buildings, or for roofs, I'm sorry. And then on the bottom just shows you where we are, the $1 million that was the original request in 23, another $1.5 million added in the capital budget in 24, and then we're asking for the additional 3 to get us up to 5.5 million. So on the next slide, again, just pretty typical. We've replaced a couple of roofs already recently. City Place roof was done at $71 a square foot. Building 33, which is the downtown campus, was at 78. The discrepancy between the two was the type of work, tear off, some additional flashing, some type of thing. So they're not really comparable roofs in terms of cost, but just to be conservative, I added some escalation to that to get us to the current time frame. So I'm assuming about $90 per square foot, which quite frankly is fat, but just a good place to get us to start. If we take the 5.5, take out soft costs, which is testing, engineering, construction inspection, that gets us a little over $4.5 million at the per square foot gets us at least 52,000 square feet that we can do on this project. We're expecting to be able to do more. So we're retaining an engineer as part of the referral. It's also to hire an engineer to come in and do the evaluations. We've already flown the area with a drone from the sheriff's office to look for some thermal imaging to get an idea of where we want to start our efforts. And we'll get the consultant on board and get something buttoned up by the end of the second quarter of this year. So we're going to be out to bid, get the project going, and get as much roofing as we can get either replaced or repaired this year, and then the balance of it will be done next year. We'll do it all as one large project to get economies of scale and just get a contractor we know and feel comfortable with. And the other nice part about it is if the fall is a nice fall and we can extend time out, we have the capability of doing that. As soon as the spring breaks, they can get back out. We don't have to go through the whole procurement process. So it's better to just have one contractor on board. So that's pretty much it. It's, again, pretty typical roof project while we're after at this point.
Any questions for Sean?
By the end of the project, what percent of the total roof will be completed?
Well, it
Have been redone.
Yeah, if we're at 107,000 and we can get 52, that's about half. So if we can go for 50%, place to start.
And then the next cycle, look at redoing the other 50%.
Right. But again, as part of the evaluation, we'll do an evaluation of the entire roof and then figure out where we are, what's the useful life of the balance of the roof.
Are you getting leaks over there now, or
Yeah, a few leaks, nothing significant that's causing people to be evacuated or anything, but
just end of life?
yeah, pretty much.
You had a Spanish tile section. Is that actually the clay tile
Yeah.
that are stacked?
You go back to the image of the building?
Yeah.
No, actually, you can't see that, can you? All right. But around the edges, it's,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
parapets and, right.
So it's more than
Decorative.
decorative, but it
Decorative
adds
stuff,
to
okay.
the aesthetics of the building.
Sure, and
It's a
cost per
beautiful-
square foot too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
Are you gonna be looking at getting high albedo materials if at all possible? Do you take into consideration the impact that having a roof that big, the color of it would have an impact on the heat of the building?
Oh, definitely,
The
yeah.
cost for
Yeah.
air conditioning, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's a couple things going on there. A number of legislators have asked about solar roofs. And from an operational standpoint, we don't like solar panels up on roofs because it just creates problems and all that. But as we go into the design, there are different types of roofs that provide different benefits. Ones that provide a little bit better UV protection aren't necessarily as good in the winter as others. So clearly part of the evaluation will be to look at that. But there is an energy code that we have to adhere to. So any design that we do will meet the New York State Energy Code. We'll certainly be cognizant of doing whatever we can to minimize, impact for heating, because that's big for the guys, right? They have to keep temperatures at a certain level.
And it looks like it's white, so I'm thinking that it already has.
Right.
Probably all EPDM already, right?
Yeah,
Way
so
EPDM,
it's way ahead of their time.
right? And then they're gonna tear off, probably make sure the insulation depth is right,
Oh, exactly, yeah.
and then pitch roof,
Right.
water drains and all that, and then put
Snow
the
accumulation, all that kind of
EPDM over, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Neat. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Everyone good online?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right. Well, hearing no other comments or questions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Great, the ayes have it. Sean?
You have to sit, listen to wastewater? Come on. We're not offering PDHs, so they don't want to stick around.
Yeah, right. Free PDHs. So the next item, we're gonna do a little differently from from the agenda. I would like to propose a motion or entertain a motion of grouping items 3D through 3P as one single action. I need a motion for that, please. Thank you, Rachel. Second, Milton, thank you.
So Christina told me I had half an hour for each one, doesn't count anymore.
Right? Anyone disagree with that? Any comments? Okay, great. All in favor, we'll do that as one group. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. So next, I need a motion. It's gonna be a long read, but if you bear with me, we will do that as one package. So I need a motion to do the following. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District entitled NWQ PWD General Pump Station Interceptor and Treatment Plant Improvements in the amount of $950,000. To amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District entitled NWQ PWD NWQ WRRF Electrical Improvements in the amount of $7.2 million. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District entitled NWQ PWD Aeration Improvements in the amount of $3 million. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District entitled NWQ PWD Preliminary Treatment Improvements in the amount of $800,000. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Rochester Pure Waters District entitled RPWD FEB WRRF Biosolids Handling in the amount of $2 million. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Rochester Pure Waters District entitled RPWD Sea Soap Tunnel System Improvements in the amount of $4.8 million. Amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Rochester Pure Waters District entitled RPWD General Collection System and Treatment Plant Improvements in the amount of $2.5 million. To amend the 2026 capital budget, adding a project to the Gates Chile Ogden Sewer District entitled GCOSD General Collection System Improvements in the amount of $350,000. To amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Rochester Pure Waters District entitled FEV Primary Scum Collection Improvements in the amount of $1 million. Also to amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District entitled IBSC PWD General Pump Station and Interceptor Improvements in the amount of $450,000. To amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District entitled IBS CPWD Thomas Creek Pump Station Improvements in the amount of $400,000. To also amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District entitled IBS CPWD Irondequoit Bay Pump Station Improvements in the amount of $1.5 million. And finally, to amend the 2026 capital budget to add a project to the Irondequoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District entitled IBS CPWD South Central Trunk Sewer Improvements in the amount of $1.8 million. And I need a motion for all of that.
So, second.
David, thank you. Rachel, David and Rachel. And Sean, are you, okay, you're presenting, nice.
Like our acronyms, says the guy from DES, right?
Right.
All right, so there's the numbers or the letters that correspond to the agenda. So I started at D, right, just in case things move around a little bit, because I lumped them by district.
Yeah.
So you see, for instance, GCO stuck in the middle of a couple of Rochester, so I just kind of moved them around in the presentation.
Sure.
To keep things consistent. So if you go on to the next slide, I show this just because, obviously we're here to talk about 26, but some of these are multi-year projects. So I will reflect that in the discussion. Because I know in the past, there have been questions about, well, we're borrowing this money now, but what about next year or last year? So,
Yeah,
you know, just in full disclosure, let everybody know what we're doing with that.
so 2026 is that first
In the
column.
green. Yep,
Yeah, right. But then 27, 28, the rest of the master plan is there on the right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's 26 through 31 CIP.
Yeah.
As published. Okay. All right, so northwest quadrant, we have just a general pump station interceptor. And as we're asking, if you look down to the last bullet there, the 26 budget, asking for $950,000. I put in the DC, that means district cash. So the general ones that we'll talk about when you see a DC, it's basically cash capital. It's not bonded money. So that it's something we account for. So the 950, we don't spend the whole amount, but it's in the capital fund. You know, we can roll that forward from year to year. Even though if it was a regular operating dollars, we couldn't do that. But because it's part of a capital project, we're allowed to do that with finance. But there's no bonding that goes along with it. We spend the money's spent, it comes out of the operating budget, which is good. And this is used for smaller projects that are done as part of our 5-year planning effort, where the mechanics and engineers and operators all sit down and talk about projects and things that have to be fixed and repaired. And the examples would be at the Spenceport pump station, we have a grinder pump. We have to replace a pump or a motor, something small like that. That would all be taken care of out of this pot of money, if you will, over time. And then we keep track of a 5-year list of projects that get done, projects that come on and come off, and address those. And we essentially we ask for about $950,000 per year. We're going to try to escalate that a little bit over time, but certainly with financial constraints, sometimes it just comes back down to the 950. And, you know, we deal with that as we move forward. So that's the general. Then if you go on to the next slide, when we get into discrete capital projects, really bonded capital projects, this is where the fun comes in about how do you treat wastewater. So wastewater is treated through a couple different processes. There's physical and biological processes. When the flow first comes in this particular case, the northwest from left to right, so from south to north, the first building that comes into, you see preliminary treatment that screens, that takes out the larger sticks, leaves, rags, types of things to keep those out of, so they don't get wrapped up in pumps. That's a physical process. That all goes into a dumpster. The wastewater then goes into primary treatment, where the smaller particles, grit, that type of thing, either settle out, or scum, which you're going to hear about in a second, depending layer. The scum, which is floatables, grease, flows to the top and is basically skimmed off the top with a squeegee. Then the water, which is a little less chunky, if you will, moves into the biological process, the aerators. And that's where we introduce air into the water, and bacteria eat the organic material. BOD, biological oxygen demand. Oxygen demand is the way it's processed, but that's a biological process.
we don't inject anything in there. It's just use air.
Just air, yeah. So we'll get to it in a second. The way this is shown right now, this is surface aerators. So basically, it's just a big paddle that splashes around the wastewater and puts oxygen in it. The aeration project we're going to talk about, I'll explain there in a second. So after it's sent through the aeration process, the plugs are fat, dumb, and happy. They move over into secondary clarifiers where they settle out, basically because they become heavier than water. Water is very quiescent. They settle out. The sludge gets thrown off the bottom and taken over into the solids handling facility. The wastewater then is disinfected and sent to the right, to the north, into the lake. Couple miles out through an effluent pipe out to the lake. Now we have a bunch of sludge, which is like 60% solids, and we have to dewater that. And the old solid tank, the kind of the yellow things you can see are holding tanks, and then we'll go to the building to the right. In the old days, we used to incinerate sludge for air quality and air regs. We don't do that anymore. We use centrifuges and dewater the sludge and then send it to a landfill. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the other projects. So the 3 projects we have going on there are electrical improvements, and that's to the tune of $7.2 million we're looking for in this year's budget. Last year's budget, we had asked for 1.8. That gets us going into the design portion of it. And essentially, the electrical systems are original to the facility. You know, so they're over 50 years old. They're starting to age out. But at the same time, because we're making the improvements to the aeration system, And also to the primary, we want to make sure that we have sufficient energy and a sufficient clean power to run those operations. Then in the aeration part, which is right now through the surface aerators, the paddles, we're going to change that over to a fine bubble diffuser system, which is similar to what we have at Van Laer, where a bunch of pipes are put at the bottom of the tank and they bubble up air through the tank, and it allows to have a more efficient transfer of oxygen into the bugs so they can process the waste a lot more efficient. And that is introduced through turbo blowers, which are really a cool technology. It's actually part of what jet engines use. These things spin like 12,000 RPMs. Are really fascinating pieces of equipment, but then basically blow all the air into the wastewater that does this biological process. And then preliminary treatment, which is actually at the front end, is bar screens. We have to replace a bunch of bar screens. And actually, I think we came asking to increase that. It was a $4 million project originally. I think we asked for an increase of up to $6 million, but this reflects now us spending the $6 million in the capital budget. And again, that's high wear and tear process. It's just chain flights and equipment that rubs against each other and wears out over time. So it's looking to replace that equipment. Going to the next slide. Now we're into Van Laer. So, if you want questions. Yeah.
So this vote on some of these, it just says capital project. So we'd be just doing the first bullet there.
26.
Right?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just to clarify.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah.
So in the case of the first one, we already have the 1.8 million, right? That was the previous capital fund. The second one, F, we're asking for 3 to get us started in design, some procurement type, and then in next year's capital 27 project, we'd ask for the additional 12 for construction. Right. And then the same thing for the preliminary. 800,000 gets us started this year in design, and then next year would be the big chunk of money to get the construction going. Right. And these are bonded capital projects that if there's any question, I guess Joe could answer that as far as how that capital project works.
So next week, when the plan CFP is
2730, yeah,
right,
those will be listed.
the second bullets will be
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Good point.
Okay. I just wanted to
clarify that. Very good. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. All right. So Van Laer, it's the same process, right? Physical up front, where you take out the big chunks first, go through preliminary treatment, which is in the center portion. It's actually kind of split in half. There's preliminary treatment or primary treatment on the west and east side, then the aeration basins are in the middle. But these aeration basins have the fine bubble diffusers, which is the turbo blowers putting in bubbles and treating the wastewater that way. Find it to be very efficient, a lot easier for the operators to manage, because it's a lot easier to manage a bunch of turbo blowers and a bunch of paddles spinning around, that type of thing. And then the white tanks you see towards the top, that's where the sludge holding is on the right-hand side, and then the brownish or the blue, it's actually, the water is pretty clear by the time it comes out here. That's the final clarifiers where the bacteria is allowed to drop out and the sludge we take off. And then it's disinfected. This one's sent out 3 miles beyond the embayment. You may have heard about the Rochester embayment. Our effluent goes out 3 point something miles beyond the embayment. So the treatment plant itself is not an issue. There's never really been an issue with the embayment. It was always the, stormwater stuff in the city. And then in the lower left-hand corner, just by the north arrow, that's the Ironically Bay pump station, which takes flow from the east side. And there's a map on here that I can explain a little bit about that here in a second. So if you go to the next slide, so solids handling actually has, or the biosolids has 2 things. I told you we used to burn it, now we use a centrifuge. The waste that comes in or the sludge at about 60% gets spun around. It's actually in my version, it's a little animation. Spins around and gets the solids to about 20% or less. That makes it more conducive for landfilling. And then we take that water that comes off of that concentrate and send it back to the front of the plant and keep processing it around. But as you can see, this is driven by motors and drives. And the initial amount we're looking for, the $2 million, is to replace program logic controllers, PLCs, and solids handling, which are kind of original equipment. Have been there 15 or so years. But this building is very damp, very moist, because there's a lot of water running around in an enclosed area. So the equipment doesn't last as long as it would in a typical environment. So the initial request right now is to replace the PLCs for the centrifuges that are there right now. In the future, we will be asking for an additional $1 million to start some additional planning just for solids handling in general. How do we handle it instead of going to a landfills or something else? But right now, it's just physical improvements to these centrifuges that are necessary. And then on the bottom is the scum treatment I told you about, right at the front end of the plant. When the grit and all that settles out in one part of the tank, we have scum, grease, anything that's solid that floats around the top. We have to take that out. And that's an old system that needs to be replaced. And that $1 million will basically do design and construction. It's kind of a one and done. There's no additional money asked for beyond 26 on this. All right. Next one is the sea soap tunnel system. So on the drawing on the right, up at the top is Van Laer. The line that goes to the right, bottom right side, that's the Cross Rondequoit Tunnel. At the end of that, at the north end, is the pump station I was mentioning, which when it was built in the 70s was actually the largest pump station in the United States. It's a huge facility. If you ever go down the back of the golf course, it looks like there's an apartment complex back there. That's actually our pump station. Yeah. So, and then on the right side is the sea soap system that was built subsequent in the 80s. So the interesting thing about this is the right side is all done by gravity, but has to be pumped up into the treatment plant. On the left side, that's all done by gravity. There's no pumps at all. So as part of this, each of those little dots that you can barely see on there has a gate. It's a large concrete structure. This guy's about 20 feet underground. He's manually operating a gate that would close a structure that we could use to isolate the system. So part of what we're looking for with this money, which I think is 4.8 million, is to do a couple different things. Replace some of these gates that have to be replaced right now. We're going to change kind of the operating scheme. When the system was first built, it was designed around hydraulically operated gates, which were nice because they had redundancy, right? You had the hydraulics initially. If the hydraulics failed, you could bring a generator to operate the pump. If the generator failed, you could actually do it manually and close the gates manually. But it's older technology. It's actually dangerous. If there's a little pinhole, there's something called injection wounds. You can actually get an injection wound, have hydraulic fluid in you. You don't know it until you get gangrene and your arm comes off. That's a dangerous thing. So we're changing those gates out to electric gates, electrically operated gates. The other thing is I mentioned that the left side is done by gravity. The line that goes just a little bit from the treatment plant down is actually called an inverted siphon. So when flow comes in, inverted siphon or depressed sewer, it's actually done by gravity, but in front of that siphon, we need to have bar screens to keep big stuff out of the inverted siphon so it doesn't plug up. So part of the money that we're going to use is to replace those bar screens, was our original going back to the 1980s. And that's a few $1 million just to take care of those bar screens right off the bat. So in this particular, well, so if you go to the next slide, I'm talking about money that you haven't seen here yet. But so we're asking for 4.8 this year, but we have already received the 1.2 million last year. And some of that was used to rehabilitate a portion of the bridge that goes across the river. You may be hearing now a lot of racket about odors from Kodak's treatment plant over on the west side of the river. But right adjacent to that, if you see that bridge coming across, that's actually the bridge for the tunnel system. It brings flows from the west side of the river to the east side, and then it hits the inverted siphon and goes up to the plant. Yeah, very, very neat system. I can go on forever, but for the sake of brevity, we'll talk about that later if you want.
Since you're on CISO,
yeah,
just a couple lines on just for newer people, what it does.
So the acronym, again, Combined Sewer Overflow Abatement Program. In the city of Rochester, the sewers are combined, which means both sanitary and stormwater go through them, as compared to like the GCO or there are other districts where it's just sanitary. And historically, back in the 1800s, the sewer would overflow and go directly into the river. And then in the late 1800s, interceptors were taken that would take the flow up to Van Laer, but the overflow would still occur. And back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was an effort to figure out how to keep those CSOs, combined sewer overflows, out of the river. And there's different techniques. You can separate the system, which means you're digging up 90% of the city, or build little treatment plants at each one of the outfalls, but there were like 50 of them, or build a tunnel system. So this tunnel system built back in the 80s was $550 million. Equivalent today is about $1.2 billion. And it was done with, my memory, 75% federal money, about 20% state money, and only like 5% local money. So Pure Waters was very progressive to go out and get a lot of money. And that was back when money
And there's only 3 of them. in
There's
the-
very, very few
Very
systems.
few,
Us,
right?
Chicago,
Yeah,
have them. And we actually received the first EPA CSO abatement award nationally. Yeah, so woo-hoo. Kudos to us. Yeah,
basically for rain events.
great event.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of operational
Right.
stuff. If there's a problem up in an older part of the
Oh,
system,
right.
you can divert flows into that,
Oh, right.
keep it out of the river to be able to get it up. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of operational benefits
Yeah.
that come out of it.
Nice.
Yeah, just a fascinating system. So someday I'll bore you with all the details of that. Going on to Rochester. So this is the general. You see it says district cash under the 2.5. But because this is a combined system, it's a larger system, we need more money in the city. And, you know, we do things like boiler replacements, the term contracts for general repairs. We have contracts where we just go and dig the sewer up and replace it in kind, or a cured in place pipe where we do an inverted sock and can not have to excavate it. A couple different techniques for repairing sewers, which work out well. And again, this is done through that 5-year planning effort. And as you can see, a lot of the sewers go back to the 1800s, right? Really 1800s, and gotta fix them up.
Yeah.
All right, the next slide. We'll jump over to GCO. Again, this is just the same thing out of the 5-year planning, $350,000 we ask for generally on an annual basis. And here we only have sanitary sewer responsibility, no stormwater. So this is all just repairing sewer pipes, trying to keep infiltration out so we don't get groundwater coming into the sewer, which takes up capacity and causes problems. So that's an ongoing struggle. And there's a number of pump stations out in that system. All told, Pure Waters has about 60 pump stations throughout all of our different districts, and about 1,000 miles of sewer. And then the Irondequoit Bay Pure Waters District, the next one, we have the general, again, $450,000 out of district cash, for the same purposes. But then if you go to the next slide, we got Thomas Creek, that's a smaller pump station. It just, you know, has been around for a while, and we need to fix it up. It's been since the 90s that we actually had some work done, so it's basic project, I think in this case, yeah. So we're asking for 40,000 to get started and another 1.6. I don't think that's 40, that should be 400. 40 grand is not getting as far. Yeah, it's 400,000. Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I can't even retire on it.
Yeah, it's letter N on your agenda.
Yeah. All right, and then the next slide is Irondequoit Bay. Again, this is that big pump station, right? It's 6 floors, half of which are underground, very, very deep. Big pump station. And we've done a number of projects ongoing constantly at that pump station, replacing motors and drives. The first effort here is to replace some motor control centers, MCCs, that are just low enough that if we have a high rain event, they could flood out and cause a problem. So we want to relocate those to a higher level. And then in 28 and 29, which you'll see in the next CIP, we want to replace the transformer and the switchgear. The main transformer coming into the facility has to be replaced because, again, that's original equipment back from the 70s. So we'll be in the process of replacing that. And then the next slide is the South Central trunk. We're asking for 1.8. This is additional money from what we had received before so that we can actually proceed with the project to make the repairs. So this is a sewer that was, if you actually go to the next slide, this is a sewer that we actually inherited from the town of Henrietta. It was a combination of either their projects or developers built it. And unfortunately, there are a couple of sections that have really steep turns, 90-degree bends in it, which restricts flow. So we need to kind of get those flow restrictions out. And there's actually a section of sewer where we've got a larger sewer going into a smaller sewer. Don't know why that happened, just we planned that one, right? Figure it out. But
Yeah.
so we've got to try to fix some of those issues to allow increased capacity, prevent overflows, sanitary sewer overflows, which are definitely forbidden. Combined sewer overflows are bad enough, but sanitary overflows are even worse. So this project is to go in and, you know, get rid of those bottlenecks so that we can increase the capacity of that sewer. And the next slide is opening it up. Questions?
You don't like this stuff, do you?
Well, my first stint, when I was first here, I was in Pure Waters.
Yeah.
I loved it. Now I build zoos and other stuff. Which I like equally as much, if not more.
When I walked through the electrical systems, I noticed they were original.
Yeah.
So it was, it's good to see them, you know, at least get on the list.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Any questions online? You guys good?
No questions. That was great.
All right,
No
thank you.
questions, but that goes back to Loon Morin. Loon Morin was the one that was driving force behind those tunnels.
Yep.
Ah,
He's the
Nice.
one that had the forethought to do that. Him and Barbara Carnival, this little history, Barbara Carnival is the one that secured a lot of the funding for that.
Wow.
Yeah, so a little anecdote about that. So as part of the system, when I was here my first stint, I was part of what was called the CSO partnership, which is a bunch of municipalities that all got together and unfortunately just bitched about how expensive things were. So they'd all go around and say, what's your problem? What's your problem? They come to me and I said, I don't have a problem because we got 85% federal funding to build this thing.
Right.
So I got out of that real fast.
Yeah.
Historically what happens, and we really do appreciate the support from everybody, because a lot of sewer agencies and other places will do nothing but complain about money or wait till things are so bad they have to get a consent decree and then go and say, well, we're under consent decree, you got to give us the money. The county really is very progressive in terms of getting things fixed rather than waiting for it to fall apart.
Yeah. I know up in
It's
Batavia,
all your support too, really.
yeah, Batavia, city of Batavia is having a lot of problems because they just let things go. And now it's a real big problem.
I think it's, it seems expensive when you see the list, but when you're planning and you get it done before it's an emergency, it's often less expensive,
Yeah.
So,
And that's where the district cash things come into play, because again, you can repair a lot of things before
Right.
they become big problems.
Right.
Right.
Victor, you had a question?
Yeah, can you go back to the slide with bullet points E down? Just the design cost seemed a little high to me compared to the construction cost.
Well, I'll be honest, what we do is we figure out what the project is and take 2080. That's all it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just simple math.
Got it, okay.
We're simple folks, so, yeah.
Just seemed a lot more than that, like 1.8 to 7.2.
Yeah, those are flip-flopped, so. Oh yeah, that's a little,
Yeah,
well,
it's just-
yeah,
Like the
Well-
like half.
Yeah.
sure.
The other part, and we've had this conversation with finance, but the risk of splitting it into 2 years is, okay, you give us money in 25, but you don't give us money in 26. Well,
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah.
So that's the
Then
risk, but
You
at the same
shelved the
time,
plans and now you're waiting
Right.
to replace them.
right. But again, we haven't come across that because of everybody's generous support, which we appreciate. But to help smooth it out, it's always better to split it, right?
Sure.
Make it look.
So do ratepayers end up paying this cost, or do we get federal and state funding? How does all of it break down?
Yes. So we do whenever we can, we go out and try to get state and federal money for this, right? And,
Yeah.
federal may be drying up, but there's state money. The other part of the state funding, they have a system called the revolving loan program. Sometimes there's requirements to go along with that, either utilization or reporting requirements, where it's actually cheaper for us to borrow money based on our credit rating that finances work on than it is to go back and use their money, and then other requirements to go along with it. What we do, we're always out there looking for money as much as possible. And then I think it's been explained before, right, that this is pretty much funded through fund balance or whatever it turns out to be until it actually gets bonded. And then when it gets bonded, that goes then back to the ratepayers, right, in the different districts. That's why each district has its own rate structure. There you go. Okay. And actually, the Irondequoit Bay South Central District actually used to be 2 districts that got consolidated because the services and the rates were similar enough where it made sense to combine them as one. And I actually worked on that my first stint back 25 years ago. But the other districts, like Northwest, were only collect conveyance. So the big interceptors in the treatment plant, GCO, where the treatment, the sewer, just sanitary sewers. There used to be a treatment plant, which is now a big pump station that pumps Van Lair. Irondequoit Bay South Central is just basically the interceptors. The treatment plant is Van Lair, so there's a back charge going that way.
Right.
And then Rochester does everything they do within that district. Yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Bill.
so if you're sending affluent or sewage to Van Lair, you get back charged because Van Lair is treating a lot of different districts, right?
Right.
It's taking everything.
Right. Just basically,
There's a cost to that process
right. It
that's
gets
shared.
Gets
Yeah.
divvied up. Yep. So Van Lair treats all the city flow.
Yeah.
Irondequoit Bay South Central flow.
Yeah.
The Gate Shiloh Sewer District flow. And then the Northwest plant does the Northwest flow.
Yeah.
and then Spencer Fort. There's other districts that kind of intermix there.
Sure.
And then actually between the GCO district northwest, because of topography, there's actually a little bit of flow in GCO that flows north into northwest.
Okay.
So we got to, account for that
Yeah.
dollar wise and all that.
Sure.
That's a nice thing about. So that's a nice thing in the way the tunnels were built. So the nice thing about the topography here is it slopes south to north, right? So that's why generally on the west side, all that flow, that tunnel flow could be sent up by gravity, which is pretty phenomenal. Big cost savings.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Rather than forced main,
Yeah.
pumping everything.
Now, Webster's sewer district is totally separate, run by, not by the county at all. Is that correct?
Correct. And there was actually a town sewer district and a village sewer district. So I think the village sewer district actually treats and then discharges into the town district.
Oh.
And part of that's on the south, the Irondequoit Bay. We do treat some of that flow, and because we're so close in the borders that we have flow that goes back and forth.
It doesn't some of their flow from Penfield and stuff come down into the Webster district?
Yes.
Because they just rebuilt their whole system over there, didn't they?
Milton.
No, it was, so we have so much design in 26 and so much construction in 27. These are local engineering firms that we're using, and they have the capacity to do so much design within 8 months? Or are we using firms outside of the Rochester area?
No, they're larger firms. So firms like Arcadis, TUI Land, that are all national firms, but they have local offices. So it's local staff managing the job with certain expertise that may be out of a different office.
Mhm.
Yeah, but under the general term, projects, we have term contracts. We may do that with, because it's smaller, more immediate. Oh, we got to fix this pump, hurry up and fix it, or an engineer would design it, right? But on the larger projects, we go out for an RFP and go through that whole process. And then like going back to the roof thing, right? We did an RFP for the roof for MCH, selected a firm, go to the ledge approves the firm, and then got to do the funding as a separate thing. Yep.
Any other questions? It looks like everyone's good with their questions. Online, are you all set, Bob and Mike?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Well, hearing no other questions or discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice job. Other business? Any other business from anybody? Oh, hearing none, we'll go on to the next scheduled meeting is March 5th, next week at the special time, 3 p.m. because it's a special meeting. We're gonna hear the new CIP. So we'll see you here in a week, but a half hour early. And I need a motion for adjournment, please. Thank you, Elizabeth. Second, please. Victor. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good rest of your week. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, Bill.
Are you gonna be?